tere! Tänane OTSE Postimehes saade on eriline. On eriline just seetõttu, et me oleme tulnud siia Helsingisse ja meid ootab siin üks väga-väga tähtis külaline. Meid ootab Soome president Alexander Stubb, kes viimasel ajal on nii Eesti, Soome kui ka laiemalt Euroopa jaoks saanud üsnagi oluliseks figuuriks. Me räägime temaga Eestist, Soomest ja laiemalt julgeolekust. First of all, thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us. And this past weekend, Finland celebrated its Independence Day, so congratulations also. In recent times, recent years, Finland has undergone a major transformation. You joined NATO a couple of years ago after decades of neutrality. Has this changed Finnish society in any way? Is Finland stronger than ever before?
Yeah, much stronger than ever before. I think there are sort of two key dates that defined our Western resolve. One was joining the European Union in 1995 and the other one was joining NATO in 2023. I would, however, do a little bit of a correction. We were not neutral after the Cold War. That's when we defined ourselves as a country which was not part of a military alliance, but of course we participated in most NATO operations, we participated in most EU operations, so we were not neutral in its classical sense.
Since joining NATO, Finland and also Estonia has faced different hybrid attacks, especially after 2022. Finland and Estonia are both Russia's neighbors. Should we be worried about further escalations?
There might be further escalations, but first of all I would like to thank and congratulate Estonia because you were the first ones who were able to fight off cyber attacks in 2007. So you were sort of groundbreakers in the new hybrid warfare coming from Russia. The way in which I see it is there are two types of warfare. One is kinetic and conventional, the one that we're seeing in Ukraine, and the other one is then hybrid. And the hybrid, I think we just need to be firm. So on the ground, it means that if Russia is sending asylum seekers across the border, you legislate and close the border. It stops. In the sea, it means that if Russians are cutting cables, you set up a NATO Baltic sentry quote-unquote operation. And in the air, it means that if they are violating airspace or if they are flying drones into our airspace, we set up an eastern sentry. So, we just have to get used to this new normal, that the line between war and peace is blurred, and then, be firm and attribute when necessary, but other than that, be cool, calm, and collected. So be kind of Estonian and Finnish.
Do these hybrid attacks make the Finnish people worried?
I would say no. I think we've stayed quite calm in the face of these attacks, and it's also, I think, important that you react with the right response. You always have to find the balance, so don't get too hysterical about it, but be firm enough. And Finns go on with their lives as before. But we're just more vigilant and understand that these things take place.
Let's speak about Ukraine. We increasingly see signs that the peace deal in Ukraine is being negotiated over Europe's head. A good example of it is the original 28-point plan, now reduced to 19, as I hear. Europe seems to have a voice because Ukraine wants Europe to have a voice behind the table. But is it too late for Europe to assert itself? What should Europe do?
Well, my first observation is to say that what we are now seeing is probably the most serious effort to get a ceasefire and a peace deal that we've seen in 4 years. And in the lead on that has been the United States. They see themselves very much as a peace mediator between Russia and Ukraine, whereas, of course, we in Europe are very much on the side of the Ukrainians. I would probably oppose a little bit the thesis that it's been negotiated above our heads. We're involved. I mean, the 28-point plan is now actually a 20-point plan, which was worked in Geneva and now over 3 days, basically in Miami with Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Umerov, and the head of intelligence of Ukraine. We have been in contact constantly through diplomatic channels with both sides, not the Russians, but the Ukrainians and the Americans, to make sure that we get into a better place. Yesterday, we had a call with a few key allies just to iron out where we are. And right now, it looks like we have one document which is the framework 20 points. We have one document which is about security guarantees, and we have one document which is about the reconstruction of Ukraine. And we keep on working with these documents together with the Ukrainians and the Americans.
When we listen to European politicians, they constantly say that Ukraine must decide for itself what just peace looks like. But the question is whether Ukraine is being pressured to a peace deal. So do you sense that Ukraine is being pressured into a peace deal?
I think Ukraine is under tremendous pressure. I mean, military pressure coming from Russia, political pressure coming from the US, and to a certain extent from Europe as well. I still think that the three key issues upon which this whole peace deal hinges, one is about territory, and that's a question that only the Ukrainians can decide on. One is on security guarantees. That's where Americans and Europeans have to be very firm. And the third one is then on reconstruction, and that's where we need to be as helpful as possible. I think we're probably all looking for an end game, and for me the end game here is that Ukraine retains its independence, which it will do, retains its sovereignty, which it will do, and finds its future in Europe and as a member of the European Union. That, in my mind, would prove that all the strategic goals that Putin had would have failed.
But, for example, the question with the territories, if that goes on, what would it mean for countries like Estonia and Finland?
Well, I mean, I don't want to draw any parallels because there are no parallels to be drawn in this particular case, and every war is different. What it probably means for us, Estonia and Finland in the future, is that we need to be even better prepared. And we need to understand that there's still an imperial undertone with whatever Russia does. What we need to understand is that we're members of the European Union, we're members of NATO, that we work together to make sure that this will never happen in the Baltics or in Finland. And I think the deterrence that we have right now is extremely strong.
Let's continue with Europe overall. Europe's greatest strength is democracy and also values. But also it seems to be sometimes its biggest weakness, because finding consensus is very difficult. How can Europe confront a world where democracy rules, political norms no longer apply without using its own values?
Well, I mean, a good place to start is the mirror. So, deal with your own democracy, deal with your own freedom, deal with your own rule of law. I would actually argue that I've never seen Europe more united than we are right now. And I myself professed EU nerd, so I'm a student of the European Union. And if you look at what we did with COVID, what we did with Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, what we did with the energy crisis, what we're doing on the peace deal right now, we're very united. Yes, you have some odd voices like Hungary, for instance, which don't fall into line. But other than that, I think a good place to start is the mirror. And I still think that Europe is the most democratic, most liberal and free continent in the world. We abide by the rule of law. But we also have to understand that democracy is not an end state. It's not a utopia. No one is perfect. You have to work on it at all times. Sometimes it shifts to the right, sometimes it shifts to the left, and we just need to learn how to manage democracy. And of course, if you look at all world rankings, equality, least corrupt, most democratic environment, etc., you'll find European states in top 10 in all of them.
Is this right now a time where Europe's decisions and actions will define whether it is a big power in the world next to US, China, Russia and so on or not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just wrote a book which actually I think was published now in Estonian called The Triangle of Power. And in that my argument is that there is this tension between a inherently liberal world order coming from the West and a reliance on traditional liberal institutions such as the UN, the WTO, the IMF and the World Bank. And then there's sort of this global East led by China, which is trying to change this. So in essence, it's about multilateralism institutions versus multipolarity, which is more chaotic. And if we keep on working on the multilateral side, I think we'll do well. But in order for that to happen, it's also Europe's moment in the sense that we need to reach out to the global south. We need to work with countries such as India, South Africa and many others. So I think we are becoming more autonomous as well. I'm an avid transatlanticist and I swear by the EU-US relations, but we have to understand that they're also shifting. So we have to work with that reality, and that means that we have to be more independent.
Mm-hmm. When we look at the discussions inside Europe right now, one thing most mentioned is the question about Russian frozen assets. Do you believe this will become a reality, considering there's signals coming from Belgium?
Well, I hope so. There's a European Council that will take place on the 19th of December. And the European Commission has put down two options on how to fund Ukraine for 2027. One of the options is the mutualization of debt, and that's kind of a no-go, I think, for many countries. And then the other one is using the frozen assets in one way or another. And I believe that at the end of the day, a solution will be found. And of course, this is one way that Europe can also show its geopolitical strength.
You mentioned before Hungary, and across Europe we can see these political winds shifting in different countries, and sometimes more toward Kremlin-friendly positions. What is the right way to deal with these countries inside the EU?
I mean, I think the starting point is to go back to what you mentioned in the beginning, stick to European values. Next starting point is stick to what we have agreed to. We have articles in the treaties which set out that we are free democracies abiding by the rule of law. And also a third point is use more majority decision making. Qualified majority is quite a good incentive to find a solution. We cannot change a country like Hungary. They decide in their own democracy what kind of a democracy they drive. And in a democracy, as I said, the pendulum shifts from right to the left, and right now there seems to be more tailwind with right-wing movements.
Are we moving towards Europe where coalitions of the willing will have more importance than EU and NATO, for example?
It's difficult to say. I think on security issues we've seen that the coalition of the willing, we have 34 countries actually including South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand and Canada, and Norway and Iceland, who are not EU members, are there supporting Ukraine very strongly. So on the security side we'll see more of the coalition of the willing stuff, and of course coalition of the 23 NATO countries in the EU. And in some cases, and I don't say this only because I wrote my PhD on flexible integration, in some issues you'll have countries forging ahead. And then you have to take a decision, do you want to be in the Euro or do you want to be outside? Do you want to be in Schengen or do you want to be outside? So I think the European Union is by definition already flexible and probably becoming more flexible as well. And I think unity is quite often defined by what kind of a threat you perceive coming from the outside. And COVID was a threat. Russia has been a threat. Energy has been a threat. And when that happens, we sort of unite more and work as one rather than as a coalition.
Let's speak about the United States also. In Estonia, we've seen the public discussion that when we see meetings with Trump happening, Estonia is not often represented and people are worried. And then our politicians say that President Stubb is representing us too. Have you done so?
I mean, you know, Nordics and Baltics are very close. Finns and Estonians are extremely close. So I would never do anything in my meetings which is counter to the interests of a country like Estonia, because our interests and values are so similar. So what I try to do as best I can in this particular time is that if I get information from the Americans which is relevant to something, I share it with the Prime Minister and the President of Estonia. So if I can be of any assistance at any time, I'm hopefully I can do that. But you know, these things shift as well. Right now, it's a lot about the U.S. relationship, but it could be something else tomorrow.
Why does the U.S., at least from our perspective, seem to be echoing elements of Russian propaganda? For example, with the new U.S. security documents, the strategic document.
Well, I mean, sometimes I look at this more, you know, almost as an academic. So I remember reading the U.S. security strategy from October 2022. And in that, it already had elements of America first. It was just used in a different kind of a language. You know, democracy was mentioned quite often. Now, democracy is only mentioned 3 times, I think, in the new national security strategy. The document, as I read it now from November 2025, has a lot of new elements as well. And the way in which I see it, it's kind of a manifestation of what Make America Great Again foreign policy is. And instead of being all upset about it, we should analyze it, be realistic, and try to work on the things that we can work on.
When we look at that document, the most noteworthy even for us is how Russia is described there. Russia is not described as a threat, it's more described as a strategic partner for the US. So like when you speak to the US president or cabinet members, do they convey the same idea?
Well, I mean, I don't kiss and tell. So, you know, I have extensive conversations with the American administration. And my take is quite clear that the number one threat in Europe is Russia. We've seen that in Georgia in 2008, we saw it in Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. And of course the behavior of Russia and the basic DNA of Russian imperialism is still there. So this is a message that I convey, and of course I convey it through examples. You know, Finland, either as part of Sweden or as an independent player, has had roughly 30 wars or skirmishes with Russia since the 1300s. And you know, Estonia is not far off that either. So we understand that Russia continues to be our number one threat, and I convey that to our American friends.
We still have a little more time. I would like to speak to you about Estonian and Finnish relations. You visited Estonia several times throughout your career, maybe even privately also.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about Estonia?
Well, it's almost like going home. You know, it's the language, it's the basic mindset, it's the values, it's the people, it's, you know, it's the architecture, it's the shops, it's the cars. Yeah, it's the books. So there's so many elements that are similar, nature as well. I had my first visit to Tartu, which was lovely because I hadn't been there. Most of the visits that I've done have always been to Tallinn. So it feels very much like a second home, and it feels nice to go there. And of course, and also just discussing with my Estonian friends from over the years. We have a very similar mindset, so it's always nice to go to Estonia.
In your view, how similarly to Finns and Estonians see the world? Where do we differ?
Not too many differences. Obviously, paradoxically, you were more integrated into Europe than Finland up until 2023 when we joined NATO, because you were members of the European Union, you had the Euro, and you were members of NATO. Now we are in the same club. So I see very little differences. I think we have a very realistic worldview of, how Russia is and what Russia does. Our experience, of course, after World War II was different. You lost your independence. we retained ours, and that has then perhaps, you know, crafted a certain mindset with Russia. But I think after Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, I think we're pretty much on the same page.
Regarding the current situation and everything happening around the world, economic situation becoming harder and harder, what would be your personal message to Estonians these challenging times?
I think, you know, just like Finns, you know, you need a little bit of sisu, a little bit of grit and perseverance to grind through a very difficult period, I think, in world history, in the sense that the order is shifting, much like it did after World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. And we need to make the best out of a difficult situation, and that means that, you know, there will be new things coming at us, which we feel quite uncomfortable with, but you just have to cope with it. And, you know, I always say that the best way to prevent the worst is to prepare for it. And I think that's what both Finland and Estonia are doing.
Mr. President, thank you.
Aitäh.